Hi, it's Nikaya here, and today I want to talk about devotion and discipline in relation to the Saturn Pisces conversation that's been going on for a while, but now people are like really into it because we've moved into that placement in the sky. So, like I say, when I start talking about astrology, you don't have to believe in it to get usefulness out of it or to find usefulness or inspiration or some keys to your own life out of it. So I just encourage you to hang out with it. You don't have to hang out with me. There's some fantastic astrological storytellers out there that can really give you some phenomenal language for engaging with your life. If you want to hang out with me, welcome and thank you. And I want to give another perspective on the Saturn Pisces conversation. I am hearing a lot of people describing this. So Saturn has moved into the Pisces constellation, and it's going to be there. There's going to be this relationship um, between these celestial bodies for the next 2.5 years. Saturn has a 2.5 year movement through the constellations. And Pisces is the 12th in the system that I'm talking about. I do understand that there are other systems that recognize a different number. I'm just focused on the tropical zodiac for this conversation today. So Pisces is the 12th, the final. Um, and there's some significance in that as well. It's like the culmination. I would like to think of it in this conversation as the culmination of all of the archetypes and expressions, life phases that have gone before. So, what I'm hearing a lot of people focus on is like the contrast between Saturn being the disciplinarian, the structure, um, like the stick in the mud kind of feeling. So Saturn gets this very heavy, disciplining, grandfatherly, old, uh, like all of those sorts of words, which are limiting. That's another word, and those words I find to be very limiting to the potential relationship that we could have with a Saturnian archetype. And I'm not getting into all of that, like the ritual Saturn. Like I'm not interested in any of that. I'm just talking about like surface level mythology here. Man, you really can't have a conversation these days without like taking off on all these tangents and trying to cover all these bases. I'm not trying to cover all those bases. So I know there's other layers and levels of Saturn. I am just speaking about the astrology right now. Pisces gets put on the other side of Saturn as being very amorphous and dreamy and hard to pin down or impossible to pin down. And whereas Saturn wants responsibility and wants us to show up for our lives, Pisces has the tendency to want to escape from life or disappear. So there's like this contrast that we focus on, and that is a real thing. I would also like to encourage the conversation around the parts of Saturn in particular that Carolyn Casey inspired me to begin to consider. And if you've never experienced Carolyn's work, it's really wonderful. It's wonderful work. She is an astrologer, and she is a phenomenal storyteller as well. And so these archetypes become archetypes, they become characters. And we are engaging with the characters and they are engaging with us. It's a very back and forth co creative experience, was for me anyway, or continues to be. So Carolyn presents this idea of Saturn being the quality in our lives, the places in our lives where we are asked, what are we willing to devote ourselves to? And in that devotion, whatever we're devoted to. And, you know, if you're thinking, So some of the language that I use is, it could be considered religious language or highly spiritual language, and I know that people get uncomfortable with that. And I'm just going to ask you to just hang with it. These are words, and if you're watching this, if you're like still with me at 5 minutes and 17 seconds in, you are adult enough, like you've got enough development to find your own words. So um, these are just words that work for me. Find the words that work for you. The word disciple, devotion, leads me to the word discipleship. And it took a long time. It was many, many, many years into my adulthood before I realized that those words, like I'd heard those words together. You know, we have devotionals in church and devotional practices and many, many spiritual practices, and there's disciples and all the religious traditions. So the words go together, but I'm not even sure if I'm going to be able to explain it, although I've explained it in other videos. But devotion, it's what we give our heart to. And when we become a disciple to the things that we've given our heart to, we develop a discipline. And while the actual actions may be difficult, it may take a lot of effort to get up at a certain time, or to stop eating or start eating a certain thing, or to watch our language when we speak and express ourselves. Those practices may be difficult because we have connected with a devotion with our heart and the thing that we are turning our attention over to. The discipline is also deeply supported. So even though the actions may be hard for our physical body, our human minds, when we've tapped into our heart in a situation and we've made that connection and said, yes, that is an experience that I am willing to commit my time and attention and energy to, then the discipleship, the discipline of that practice of developing and being in relationship with that thing, whatever that thing is, that gives us some ease, even while we may be struggling with the early mornings or the early evenings or the water, or, you know, like just throwing out some ideas there for you that you might be able to connect with. Someone who's decided to go like build their body in some sort of way, tone muscle, develop muscle, whatever. It's like going to the gym. So, backing up to Pisces and Saturn and Pisces. So, in addition to the Saturnian need for structure, regulation, discipline, constriction, restriction, etc., there's also this question of what are we willing to devote ourselves to over this next 2.5 years. And Pisces is the archetype of many things. Like, it is the last of the zodiac, so it encompasses all of our experiences along this human journey, and that's what the 12 signs also represent, is our progression, our experiences along our, like, a lifetime, in the areas of life that we tap into and can play with. So Pisces is a culmination of that. It includes everything. Pisces is also known as the spiritual, it's like the archetype that contains our spiritual experience, our awareness that we are connected with a divine, or, I mean, divine is, for me, becoming a super limited word, but like that experience of divinity and something bigger, greater, more than me in this singular form. So Pisces is that expression. We might think of Pisces as possibilities, Pisces as the dream time. Pisces is vast, and Saturn likes to constrict. And so what I've been seeing in this conversation is a lot of talk around the constriction of Piscean ideals. But I am also curious about the movement of a planetary body into a constellation. So the movement of Saturn into the constellation or the field of Pisces, it's like going to someone's home. And there are customs around the world that bring a guest in and involve the guest, the visitor, into the home. So you become a part of the family. Make yourself at home. You're now a part of the family. And so Saturn has come into Pisces dominion and space. And for me, it's not all about how can Pisces conform to the Saturnian qualities, but how can Saturn and Pisces create something new together. So Pisces, like that part of us that is vast, there is no containing it. There's no amount of Saturnian quality that's going to be able to come in and say, okay, we're going to rein this in. But can we capture some of our vastness and create a devotional practice around this part of our vastness, whatever that is for you? Like, what's coming up for you as you're listening to me now? What images do you have in mind? What conversations, what words, like what is being sparked or called forward in you as you are listening to me speak and listening to anyone out there speak? This is how we start getting a sense of what's for us and what creative inspiration we are able to channel. We hear people and we start seeing the imagery and the inspiration coming forth. So just pay attention to what's coming up for you as I'm speaking. So it's not just that Saturn gets to come in and like rein Pisces in and get Pisces out of bed in the morning and, stop crying, Pisces, like all of this sort of thing that I hear a lot of people talking about. It's a question of like Pisces is one of the devotional archetypes. Like Pisces just wants to lay at the feet of divinity and just be in that space. So what can Pisces offer to Saturn of that knowing and that connectedness that then Saturn in its devotional capacity, its deep capacity for discipline and structure and creation, like what can we offer? What can we offer in devotion and discipleship and discipline back to the world that can come into form through a Saturnian intelligence, like Saturn, that part of us. So we look at these objects in the sky and we think, like some of us are taught to think of their objects in the sky, but if we look at them as reflections, mirrors for us, Saturn is the part of us that understands how to be disciplined and devoted to something. And Pisces is a part of us that understands that there's so much more than what we can see with our physical self. We know things. And we're coming into an age where more of us are going to recognize that we know things. Like for the longest time, intuition has been reserved for just a few special people who are so highly intuitive, but like that's a quality that we all have. And it's an invisible quality, and that Piscean energy is like Neptune is involved with Pisces. Jupiter is also involved with Pisces. I do like those classical associations, and Jupiter is big and expansive. Neptune is the dream, the visionary, and it also has delusion wrapped up in that too. There's a lot wrapped up in there. But we are invited always to engage with what's showing up in our field of awareness. And right now, if you're paying attention to this sky movement, we have these two seemingly, because we make it so, opposing archetypes and qualities within ourselves that would like some integration. How do I become a devoted disciple? I love that word, disciple. With some element of the intangible vastness of my being. It's possible. I don't know exactly how that works, but what I do understand is in the devotional practice, showing up at your altar. Your altar may be your car, it might be your desk at work, your altar might be your children, it might be your body. It's the place where we are in daily relationship and respect with the, I don't like using the word things, but with the things, the people, the experiences that inspire us and keep us moving forward in our lives. So where can we draw some of that down? And again, I I'm reaching over here with these hands of mine. So where can we bring that down, that Piscean energy of vastness and love? It's a big love, that universal love rather than the personal love. And how can I bring it down into form, put it into a form through the Saturn skill set? So what's happening in my head right now is that that feels like a very Piscean thing. I'm not sure that actually communicated well, but I'm going to trust that you're able to use some piece of that for yourself. So in addition to the like Saturn forward conversations that I'm hearing about Saturn being in Pisces, which has a lot to do with Pisces being uncomfortable and Saturn being uncomfortable and a lot of restriction and all of this, we can leave space for that. It's really more of a co-creative, more of a like some personal responsibility, more of an opportunity to be personally responsible for this experience, to ask ourselves these questions of devotion and discipleship. Where can I bring devotion and discipleship into my life? And it doesn't have to be through just Pisces and Saturn. They're just like the doorways through, and I do see them as doorways that sit together. These things are not at odds with one another in the astrological chart. I don't see it that way. So we have now come into an invitation around bringing the formless into form, and we are creative beings, and we have the capacity to a degree to be able to bring formless into form. And what is calling you beyond the day-to-day commitments that you already have? What else is calling you to bring the formless, intangible feeling, sense of things into a form that can then be shared with other people? That's what I'd like to share. Thank you so much for joining me. Thanks for listening and being with me for this time. Have a beautiful Thursday. It's Thursday. And I'll see you again.